I have a small work area in my basement, but I don't have a workbench or even a good way to organize my tools and supplies. So I'm going to remove all those shelves and build a workbench that looks like this. I was inspired by a few designs I found online. Check the description below for links to the ones I borrowed from the most. I started by cutting almost all of the pieces for the frame, which is made entirely from 2x4s. The legs of the workbench will be doubled, and my design has 2 shelves underneath the bench, so I needed to make a lot of cuts. I cut everything in my garage and then brought the cut pieces down to my basement, where I assembled everything. I'm using pocket holes to lock the legs tightly together with the long support beams, but the legs will be further reinforced when I double them up with a single board. Once I have all the pocket holes drilled in the smaller leg pieces, I started assembling. In addition to the pocket screws, I'm also using regular wood glue to add more strength to the frame. I finished one of the long sides, so now I'm going to repeat the process to create the other side of the frame. And now it's time to clean out the corner of my basement where this bench will go. First, I had to remove everything off all the shelves. Behind the camera, I have some additional shelf space, so that's where a lot of this stuff is temporarily going to live. Once it's all decluttered, it's time to remove the shelves. Don't worry, I'm keeping the wood. Those are nice dry 2x12s that I'm sure will come in handy in future projects. Okay, back to the frame. Now, I'm doubling up the legs with single pieces of 2x4 to add strength. On the right side of the screen is where the top of the bench will end up when it's standing upright. To make sure everything is tightly held together, I used additional construction screws to lock all of the pieces to those doublers. I don't know if it's necessary, but I figured it couldn't hurt. Finally, I added the bottom spacers to finish the legs of the frame. So now I have the 2 sides of my workbench completed. All I need to do now is connect them together using the cross pieces I cut earlier. Okay, so the last cross pieces are in, so that means the structure itself is done now. All I have left to do is cut and put in the shelving for here and here, and then put the bench top on. I cut each shelf from some pretty inexpensive 1/2-inch plywood. I cut the plywood after I made the frame, just to make sure everything fit together a little better. I secured each shelf to the frame using a few small screws, just enough to tighten down each side. I'm using a nicer grade of 3/4 inch plywood for the top of my bench. I cut down 2 sheets of the plywood at the same time, so they are exactly the same dimensions. After adding a consistent layer of glue to the top of one piece, I can put the other piece on top and glue them together into a high-quality 1.5 inch bench top. Once I let the glue dry, I moved the workbench to its final location and secured the bench top to the frame using construction screws. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to protect the top of my workbench with this 1/8 inch hardboard I cut. It fits exactly on top of the workbench, and I'm going to nail it down to the top. This way, if it gets damaged, I can just replace this cheap piece of hardboard instead of the expensive plywood underneath. I used some framing nails to secure the hardboard to my bench top. I had some problems keeping the nails straight, but I eventually got them all in. And here's the finished product. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's really stable, it's extremely sturdy, and I expect to get many years of use out of it. I also installed some pegboard and started to organize my tools. I still have a lot of unused shelf space down here, which is great because I still have a lot of tools I want to buy. I look forward to making future videos about projects I make on my new workbench. If you want to see those videos, please subscribe to my channel. That's it, so thanks for watching. See you next time.